Yeah, as Jim said, this month we're kicking off spiritual disciplines. We do have resources available, so we'll have to see Jim. We've got this book by Richard Foster, and it's called Celebration of Discipline. I can assure you that this is one of the best books on spiritual disciplines you can get. When Philip and I did a course at a Bible college, this was the textbook that they used for spiritual disciplines. So we do have them available. So come and see myself or Jim, and there's that. We also have a summary of the spiritual disciplines as well available if you want to take one of those. So that's that. Fasting. First of all, I want to say, if you have never fasted before, make sure that you prepare to fast properly. It's vital that you do that, even if you're just doing partial fast or whatever, because it can be a bit of a shock if you've never ever fasted before. Also, if you have a medical condition, please check with your healthcare provider about what you want to do. I have a really good doctor, and in the past, if I've wanted to, because I do have a couple of medical conditions, if I want to fast, I will go and see her and I'll say, look, I want to fast for faith reasons. This is what I'm thinking of doing. These are the foods I'm going to cut out. These are the foods I'm going to keep, etc. And we work out whether that's okay with what I have and the medication that maybe I'm on at the time. So if you have any medical condition, even though the fast technically kicks off now, contact your healthcare provider tomorrow. I think it's vitally important. We don't want to see anyone having any adverse reactions as a result of the fast. Now, having said that, the very word fasting has been known to send people into shudders, cause some people to stop in their tracks, and others, which is what I noticed yesterday at the Leaders Connect, to run to their pantries and carbo load for the long famine ahead. A couple of people yesterday were like, yeah, I've got to have some more to eat because we're fasting, yeah? But that's fasting in general, okay. But what about biblical fasting? What actually is it? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I said over here. I had an outlier. You can't have an outlier. You've got to come over. So fasting is just a decision to voluntarily go without food for a period of time. Now, at the moment, intermittent fasting and things like that are really popular in the world, social media and all that sort of thing, for a couple of reasons: weight loss, but also the health benefits that can come from actually giving your body a bit of a break from digesting food. But biblical fasting, what is it and why should we do it? It's not about sacrificing our food on the altar, on God's altar, and then being miserable and looking at the food just burning up and going, oh, and God wafting it through his nostrils. It's not about sacrifice. It shouldn't be about sacrificing our food on the altar of God. Hosea 6:6 says, "For I desire and delight in dutiful, steadfast love and goodness, not sacrifice." And I love this bit. "And the knowledge of and acquaintance with God more than burnt offerings." This is not about you sacrificing. This is about you giving God a love offering of your time, of yourself, of your emotions, of your heart, of your thoughts, of everything. The idea of biblical fasting is not really about us sacrificing, as I just said. It's more about a love offering. A true godly fast is about setting time aside to be with God, to listen to him, to love on him and him on you. It is about seeking him and his will, not about showing him what you've sacrificed for him or trying to get him to come on board with you. It's about us aligning ourselves with him, which is something Jim touched on today. Biblical fasting is something that we do here on earth that has a spiritual impact. I've heard it said that you can pray without fasting, but you cannot fast without praying. Because as soon as you do that, you're on a diet. You're not fasting anymore. You're not doing a biblical fast. So, who is biblical fasting for? Well, it's obviously just for the elders. It's not for the rest of us, is it? Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to burst that bubble, but biblical fasting is for every single believer. Whether you've been saved for 30 seconds or 30 years, biblical fasting should be a part of our lifestyle. We are called to a lifestyle of fasting while we are here on earth or until Jesus comes back. In Matthew 9, Jesus says, "Can the friends of the bridegroom mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast." So our bridegroom is Jesus, and he is no longer with us here on earth. So we should be living a lifestyle of fasting until he returns. Also, in Matthew 6, it says, "When you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear to men to be fasting. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward." Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I miss a meal, if I'm not fasting correctly, I get really hangry. And my husband knows I haven't eaten. But when we're fasting, when we are saying, "God, I set aside this time and I lay it down for you," I would say that the likelihood of you actually feeling those horrible hunger pangs, I'm not saying you won't get hungry, is very, very minimal. Philip has often said, like a few years ago with one of our nieces, and he was praying and he was fasting, and he said he noticed that when he was fasting, he would, if he got hungry, he'd just go and lock himself away and pray, and it would go. That feeling would go. So as much as we all know that most of us will be doing some form of fast, don't go up to someone and say, "Hey, how you going? How's your fast going?" Let it go, because it's between them and God. It's not really anyone else's business. So we are called to fast as part of our faith walk. However, even though God calls us to a lifestyle of fasting, he does not force us to do it. He wants us to hunger after him because we want to, not because he said so. This is why fasting is not a sacrifice, but a love offering. A sacrifice is something God has required. But fasting should never be a sacrifice. It's actually a love offering. So why should we fast? While there is no law on how to fast, Jesus mentioned fasting during his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6. During this sermon, Jesus spoke about murder, adultery, divorce, oaths, revenge, loving your enemies, giving to the needy, prayer, worry, etc., and fasting. He mentioned all of these as a way to show us how we can live a righteous lifestyle. But none of this can be done if we try to do it on our own. And I believe fasting plays a crucial role in helping us to be able to live out the Sermon on the Mount. Because we position ourselves, because we seek after God, that's how we love our enemies. That's how we don't take revenge. That's how we make sure that we're not just saying, "Oh yeah, I swear by Almighty God, I'll never ever do this again." No, it's not about that. It's about actually saying, "God, change me from the inside out." Fasting is not something we do so that God will do what we want. I love it because Jim took the words right out of my mouth. I've got written here, it is not like an arm twister for God. We're not trying to get him to submit to our will, but we are submitting ourselves to his. Fasting places us in a spiritual position to draw closer to God. It helps us shut out our cravings for a while and tune in to what God is saying and who he is, and really get to know him, his heart, his character, etc. It also can help us grow spiritually stronger and higher as we spend time with God. He's able to help us help to prepare us for what he has for us. Something that came on my heart when I was just prepping for this, and I shared with Philip. When we were a bit younger, like in the early 70s, we didn't have mobile phones or anything like that. We had landlines. And when you were on the phone with the landline, you couldn't go walking around. You couldn't go and hide. You had to sit right near the phone. So Philip lived in Randwick and I lived in Kingsford, which, for those of you who don't know, only a couple of suburbs away. But both of us lived directly under the flight path for the airport. So we'd be on the phone and Philip would go, "Oh, hang on a minute, there's a plane going over, I can't hear you." I go, "Yeah, okay." And it'd pass. And then, like, not even a minute later, "Oh, hang on a minute, that plane's going over me now. Hang on, I can't hear you." That's what fasting does, is we place ourselves in a position next to the landline. And we go, "Hang on a minute, Lord, I can't hear you. There's a plane going overhead." Sitting there, waiting, and we would just wait until the plane left, and then we could continue our conversation. And of course, a few planes would go over at the time because we had long conversations. So it's the same for us. Place yourself next to the landline. The plane going overhead are all your worries, your cares, the world, preparing dinner, going shopping. That's the plane going overhead. Shut it out. Stay at the landline. Position yourself. So for me, I just thought it was a really good analogy of actually what fasting does. It's to shut out the noise of the world, the noise of your flesh, the noise of everything, of the stuff you're going through, and being able to hear God and have great, funny, intimate conversations. Matthew 9 says, "No one..." Is that right? Yeah. So Matthew 9 says, "No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst and the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." So why do we fast? Because there's a process that we need to go through in order to change from one degree of glory to the next. There's a process involved in accommodating the unshrunk cloth into the old garment. And that process is, it has to be shrunk, process. Has to be sewn in, process. Then the garment can be worn again. It's the same with the wineskins. There's a process that needs to happen in order to contain the wine. God wants to pour new wine into us. Then we need to go through the process of placing ourselves in a position to be able to hold that new wine. So when should we fast? Well, that's a really good question. I know people that fast regularly and it's part of their weekly spiritual walk. I know people that do it not as regular as weekly, but still regularly. And there are those that do it spasmodically. And then there are those that want to do it but don't. And then there's those that just don't get it at all. And I have been all of these people at some time over my last 27 years walking with Jesus. So if you've fasted before and you haven't for a long time, don't beat yourself up. Just ask God, what do I do? When should you fast? You fast when you decide you want to fast. You fast when you want breakthrough, things like that. So there is no right or wrong time to fast. However, fasting can be done when you may need a breakthrough in your life, to seek Him on behalf of someone else, to overcome sin in your life, at a time of grieving, and for a whole bunch of other reasons. That's why you fast. You fast because you want to hear the heart of God. You fast because you need Him
to touch you. You need him to break through. And you need to break through. That's why you fast. And that's when you fast. You fast when you need the breakthrough. Oh, sorry about that, guys. How do we fast? There are 3 ways to fast: standing, sitting, and lying down. No, I'm joking. A normal fast, a partial fast, and an absolute fast. And each, you need to know, one is not holier than the other. One's not going to give you a greater result than the other. They are all beneficial, and we should all be practicing all of them at some stage during our walk, depending on how we're being led by God and depending on what it is that we're going through and why we are fasting. So I don't want people to leave here thinking absolute fast is the only way to fast. That's not necessarily true, because the Bible has 3: normal, partial, and absolute. So the normal fast, which would normally be no food and is generally water only. Some people will do liquids, so that's fine, but that's your normal fast. So that's one way of fasting. You might think, that's what I want to do. I will tell you a story. I have done a normal fast, no food, water only, for a whole week. I went away on my own, got myself a little thing in the caravan park, and I checked with my husband and my pastor and said, this is what I'm feeling in God to do, and off I went. And it was amazing, okay? So 1 week, I did feel a bit sorry for the girls cleaning up after I left, because all I had was all these empty containers of water everywhere and no food scraps. I think they thought I was a bit crazy. But so I have done that. I have done it. I have only done it for that length of time once. That was 1 week of prayer and fasting. But I actually went away. I didn't try and do my normal work. I didn't do exercise. Oh, well, we'll get to exercise later. But I didn't do anything like that. So that was one. So I've done a normal fast. A partial fast is when you might say give up certain foods. I think in Daniel 10 it talks about like that sort of partial fast where you give up, like I think they gave up delicacies and meat and wine and things like that. So you might decide, well look, I don't think I can do a normal fast because I can't go and lock myself away. I do have to work. So you might decide, okay, I'll give up, like I like my red steak, so I used to have steak every night. I won't have steak, I won't have this, and I won't have that. So, and that's fine too. It's just a matter of what you think is right for you. And also partial fast. All the single people can just cover their ears for a minute. Partial fast can also include abstaining from marital relations, so long as there's an agreement between the couple as well. That can also form part of your partial fast. That's in 1 Corinthians, that scripture, 1 Corinthians 7. And the absolute fast is exactly as it sounds: no food, no water, or liquids of any kind. This is usually up to 3 days in length and never any longer. In this book by Richard Foster, he actually says it should be underscored that the absolute fast is an exception and should never be engaged in unless one has a very clear command from God, and then for no more than 3 days. I don't like to put a time frame on God. If you have a clear direction to go on an absolute fast, ask God what the length of time is. Jesus, at the end of his time in the desert, sorry? Did you say? 3 days? Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yeah. Jesus was hungry at the end of his fasting. So, as Jim said, rightly pointed out, if it's going to be longer than 3 days, please seek medical advice. I would very, very much warn against it. But as I said, I don't want to box God in any way. I would also say if you feel that you're called to an absolute fast, we live in a great community. You have great elders. Chat with the elders as well, just so that they can also cover you in prayer and there's accountability there. We want to make sure that you guys are safe as you are walking out your spiritual walk. So, no matter how you fast, You should ensure you prepare yourself correctly to fast. This is very important for your health and to ensure that your fast is a success. So if you have never fasted before, be aware of the proper way to start and finish your fast. As I said before, if you have a medical condition, seek advice, talk to them. Most doctors will be open to the fact that you want to do a fast for faith reasons, and they will actually try and help and support you if you have a medical condition to be able to do that. Generally, if you're preparing for a time of fasting, you should ensure that you keep yourself very well hydrated in the days leading up to your fast, even if you're doing a partial fast, because your body has carbohydrates, and carbohydrates actually carry the water around our bodies. So if we need to then overly hydrate our bodies, because if we're limiting our calories and limiting our carbohydrates, then we will dehydrate. So we want to make sure that we hydrate ourselves beforehand, start the fast, keep the water up while you're fasting, and then come off. And we'll talk about how to break the fast in a minute. Keep yourself, leading up. Also, reduce your, if you haven't already done it, reduce your caffeine. I know, sorry guys. Reduce your caffeine, your sugar, and your processed foods as well. Those things don't help our bodies at the best of time, but the idea is to try and get them out before you start limiting the amount of food that you're going to have and the amount of intake that you're going to have as well. It helps prepare your body for the reduced calories and also helps with clearing out your toxins. And that's the idea of keeping yourself hydrated as you do that. Helps clear the toxins out of your body. For those of you that are big coffee drinkers and you're not going to have caffeine for a couple of days, I'll be praying for you, because those headaches can be horrendous. So that's the idea of keeping yourself hydrated, is to try and overcome some of those things. Any questions? Yes. I can't hear you, sorry. Yeah. I still can't hear you. Yeah, you have to come down here. I can't hear you. Come, Richard. I can't hear you. Sorry. There's fans and everything going.
Some people fast for half a day, morning to evening, and break it. Where does it fall under the three categories?
Where does it what?
Fall under.
Where does it fall under?
To me, that's a partial fast. Because, and also it depends, for me, when I took myself away, I just fasted all the time because I didn't have to do anything. I was away. If we're working, I know Philip over the years when he's been a tradie and as a plumber, and he's wanted to fast, well, his work is very labour intensive. He cannot go without food all day if he's digging holes. So he would then choose to fast at another time, or he might just cut out a whole blanket of food. So what you're talking about, if you're just going to say, well, I'm not going to have breakfast and lunch and then maybe I'll only have dinner, to me that's just all part of how you fast. It's what you can do with your lifestyle. I don't necessarily, to me it's like a partial fast. It's like it falls into the partial fast, because you're not fasting for the whole 24 hours. You're not involving whatever it is that you're doing for that whole 24 hours. It's just for a set period of time. And that's a really good point, because that's something else that you can do, is that you might decide to just fast for a certain period, or you might decide to fast just for a couple of days over the next week because of your job. It all just depends, The idea of the whole fasting is to actually take yourself away at that time that you would eat lunch, at that time you would eat breakfast, whatever, or at that time that you would cook or go out shopping for food. That's the time you spend with God. If you're working, that's the time you spend with God. So you get a lunch break, guess what? You're not going to go and buy and hang out with the other people. You're going to take yourself away, read your word, and pray or worship or something. Because if you don't do that, if you say, well, I'm fasting, like I said before, and you don't do those things at that time, then you're just dieting. You're just denying yourself, and you might get some physical benefit, but you're not going to really get any spiritual benefit because you're not sitting next to the landline saying, the plane, I can't hear you. Okay, now I can hear you. We need to make sure we connect to that. I knew someone was going to say that. Okay. So, are there any other questions? I feel like I'm just motoring through this. How to break the fast. This really does depend on, and I have seen some stuff on different WhatsApp groups of people saying, well, this is how you break a fast, or this is how you break a fast. My experience is it depends on the type of fast you're on, the length of fast, your own metabolism, and if you have a medical condition. That determines really how you break your fast. So that's why if you have a medical condition, it's very important that you see a healthcare provider because they will help you work out how to break the fast and how to go back to normal eating again. Generally, it is recommended that you do not just start feasting to break your fast. You may be hungry, but just gorging on food may actually do you more harm than good. Your goal should be to return to a normal eating pattern, and depending on the duration and type of fast, this may take a couple of days. My experience with my 1 week water fast, it took me about 2 days, 3 days to get back into a normal eating pattern. What I did, I broke the fast. It was a Sunday. I was up at Enna Bay, so I was going to travel back to Sydney that morning to go to church. So I sat down to a breakfast of clear broth and a piece of toast, which is probably not the best, but I didn't eat all the toast. But I had a bowl of clear broth and a half a slice of toast and a cup of actually black tea with no sugar. And that's how I broke the fast. And then over that day, I just ate very light vegetables, fruit. The next day, I included a bit of bread, and I just took my time. By 2 or 3 days, I was back to normal eating pattern. So as I said, it depends on the type of fast you're doing, when you're doing it, how long you're doing it for, as to what you do. But generally, it's recommended that you just remember the idea is not to jump straight back into a normal eating pattern, but to actually introduce food again. Your body hasn't had to work. Your body works really, really hard to digest your food. The amount of calories we burn just digesting our food is phenomenal. Your body hasn't had to do that for that amount of calories for a few days. So you need to be gentle to your body and reintroduce the food. I would recommend you start with things that are easy to digest and not just rip into a donut or gorge on a big plate of pasta. That will feel great going down, but I can guarantee you, depending on the type of fast you've done, within a couple of hours you're going to be rolling in agony, because I've done it. Your body, hasn't had to digest, I said that. You should start with something simple like fruit or vegetables or a broth, and then move to like protein and carbs and stuff like that. I'm nearly finished. Any other questions about maybe how to start or how to break a fast? Thank you. Yes, limit your exercise while you're fasting. I don't care what kind of fasting you're doing. If you're a gym junkie and you go to the gym every single day and you've now decided, yes, I'm going to come on board with this corporate fast, and I'm going to do a partial fast, so I'm just going to have vegetables, I'm not going to worry about protein. Give your body a break, because what can happen is your body may not be used to burning your fat stores for energy, because it takes your body a little while to get used to that. You will run out of the glycogen, which is the energy in your muscles, quickly. And again, your body's not used to doing that. So just be careful, just limit your stuff, because what happened to me when I did my fast and I went away for a week, I felt fantastic. It was great. I was spending time with God. I was writing copious notes. I was crying. And then about the 4th or the 5th day, I thought, because at Enna Bay, Fingal Bay, they've got that nice walk up that that nice hill, or sorry, I'll call it Mount Everest. So I thought, I'm going to drive there, and I'm going to do that walk. I felt great. I'm go up the hill. Oh, that was a bit tougher than what I thought. I go back down. That night, I woke up and I had horrendous stomach cramps. Like, I felt sick. I'm up, I'm saying, get behind me, Satan, how dare you try and... I'm trying to blame the devil for my own stupidity of walking up a hill when I hadn't eaten. And at that time, I don't look like it now, but at that time, I was a long-distance runner. I was super fit. So it wasn't this body that fasted then. It was another body that fasted then. One was a lot younger and a lot fitter than what this one is now. So I just thought I could do anything. So just be careful with your exercise that you don't overdo it. It's only a few days or however long. It's not the rest of your life. You're not going to die if you don't go to the gym or you don't get your walk every day. You're actually going to look after your body and take care of it while you're also taking care of your spiritual self as well. So we don't want to see anyone get sick from this. We don't want to see anyone get injured, nothing like that. So I just want you guys to take care of yourselves, because I would love to see us have fasting as a huge part of our lifestyle. Because if we want what God has for us, if we need to position ourselves, and it needs to be done on a regular basis. Yeah? Yeah?
So you've talked amazing about fasting from food biblically. That's what the Bible talks about. What about things, and what do you think about other types of fasting, like fasting from social media, TV, fiction, all the above, and how does that fit in with biblical fasting?
Okay, so for me at the moment, I'll use myself as an example. I do have some health conditions. I am not going to be actually fasting from food or anything like that, because at this point, with everything that we've gone through and with how my body is, I do not think that that would be wise for me. So for me, and this is why I think if you have any sort of medical condition or whatever, I think it's very important to know that you can still fast. You don't have to fast the food. Work out what it is that takes you away, like Jim was saying, takes you away from God. What's the thing where it is? It might be binge watching Netflix. Turn Netflix off for a week. Suspend your account for a week. Spend that time, that hour or two that you would sit in front of Netflix, spend that seeking God and spending time. In the Bible, it definitely talks about food and fluids and things like that for fasting, but not everyone can do that. So I don't believe that if you decide, I'm not going to fast food, but I'm going to fast because food may not be a big issue. For some people, food is an issue. But food may not be your issue. Your issue might be that's keeping you away from God, could be social media. One thing that we did, I think at the beginning of the year or just before Christmas, we switched off and we said, okay, we're not going to have Facebook or anything on our phones anymore. We're only going to see it when we are on the computer. We can look at it then. Philip doesn't go on the computer, so the poor fella hasn't looked at Facebook for a couple of months now. I, on the other hand, do, because I go on the computer. But that was something that we recognised, okay, we need to get off this social media stuff a bit. So we made that decision. So if you can't do the food, I do believe that you can get just as much benefit out of stopping those other things. But again, if you're not positioning yourself next to the landline at that time that you would normally binge watch or death scroll, as they say, or whatever, then there's no point. Just keep doing it. Because if you're not going to spend that time with God, keep eating, keep drinking, keep watching social media, because there's no point. You're not going to benefit. The whole purpose of this is for your spiritual benefit, not for mine, not for Jim's, not for Hannah's, but for yours. So ask God. If you don't know how to fast or you don't know what you should be doing, spend some time today asking God, how should I fast this week? What is going to give me the biggest bang for my buck? How can I pour out a love offering for you this week in fasting? What is it that I need to give up? Do I need to give up going out with my friends for lunch? Do I need to give up social media? Do I need to give up food? What is it I need to? It might be something simple like, don't drink any wine this week. You might be used to having a nice glass of wine with dinner, just one. But God, the Holy Spirit might say for you this week, don't do that. Spend that time after dinner with me. That 20 minutes even for having one glass of wine will do amazing stuff eternally if you spend that time with God. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Timmy. Oh, yeah, I know. Lots of water. Lots of water. Prayer. But so you have a bit of a labour-intensive job, so be careful of what you do. You may have to have something, like if your blood sugar drops really, really low, have something to eat. Don't faint. Oh, for goodness sake, don't faint. Don't faint. Have something to eat, honestly, because if that's far more, your health is far more important than anything. You have to make sure you keep yourself hydrated as much as possible. Maybe have something like a hydrolyte or something like that, as well. That could help. Glucose. Yeah, I was just going to say that. Glucose lollies, they can help. They'll just give you that sugar boost. But again, if you're labour intensive, if someone has a labour intensive job and you're still working this week, please don't just do water only, because unless God tells you to, because it can be, or maybe do fluids. So that means you have your hydrolytes, you can have glucose drinks, things like that. But if you're getting faint or whatever, suck on a glucose lolly. I remember when I was a teenager, we'd go bushwalking with my cousin's uncle, not my uncle because he was on the other side, and he was a bushwalker, and he wouldn't give us any food. And we'd be out for hours, but he'd give us glucose lollies, and he'd give us water, and then when we stopped, then we would eat. So, and the glucose, I was amazed, the glucose did amazing. So, just have glucose, hydrolyte, lots of water. Headaches, sorry, lots of water. Panadol. Any other questions? Yeah. If you're having fluids only, coffee will take away your headache, but it will also dehydrate you. So, okay, no more questions? I'm going to wrap up with how not to fast. Yep. I like that. Yeah. Okay. I heard a story once of a guy many years ago. This is from our old pastor, Leo, and he wanted to go on a fast. He said, I'm going to go, and he goes, liquids only. And so he asked if he could puree steak and vegetables and drink it. Well, I mean, if that's what you really want to do, but then what's the point? But I don't think it would taste very nice. But again, it's up to you. I don't know, have you got a labour-intensive job? If you want to do fluids, have the fluids. If you have peace to have protein and have a protein shake and that in the morning and then do whatever, do it. I don't think I suppose the big thing I want you to take away, there are no set rules of how to fast so long as you fast. So long as when you're taking that time, you're seeking God, and you're positioning yourselves to hear from him and to let him touch you. So there are no set rules. If Philip was working full-time labouring with plumbing, and he will be working this week, so please pray for him, it's a big job. So I will make sure that he has food of some sort so that he can work. And then when he gets home, he gets nothing. Well, it's probably not that far away. So there's no hard and fast rules. This is how you should do it. I've got some handouts on some of the types of fasts that are in the Bible. so that you can take home, and also sort of lengths of fasts and why those fasts were that length, because I don't want to just spoon feed you everything. You've got a whole week now to go away and meditate on even fasting and what it does, and learn from it. I want to encourage each of you to take a journal, write down what you learn about fasting. Write down what you learn, because then you can teach somebody else. Okay, how not to fast. Isaiah 58, New King James says, "In fact, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exploit all your labourers. Indeed, you fast for strife and debate, and to strike with the fist of wickedness. You will not fast as you do this day, to make your voice heard on high. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush, and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Would you call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord?" That passage is talking about when you say, "I'm going to fast," and you don't, connect yourself to the landline and connect into God for the plane to go over so that you can hear him. That's when you decide to fast and you don't bother going and making that love offering to God, and you just keep going about your day and the work, and like maybe the whole lot of us are called to fast, and we decide, no, we're not, we're fasting, I'm going without food, but you're not actually fasting, you're just going hungry. That's what that passage is talking about. The Lord's actually saying, you call this a fast? This is a fast? This isn't a fast. This is you trying to make yourself look good amongst the other people. This is you trying to lord it over your workers. This is you. This isn't what I've called you to do. That is not a fast to God. A fast to God is when we actually go to the landline, sit down, listen, and spend that time with him. That's fasting. I would encourage you to actually read that whole passage about fasting in Isaiah 58 before you start fasting. So tonight, as part of your preparation, take that scripture, go home, read it, meditate on it, ask God, how should I fast this week? What is it that I should do so I can show you how much I love you and how much I want to be with you? How can I position myself this week? Take that scripture, meditate on it, and I can guarantee you that this time next week, you'll be all going, wow, guess what God said to me? Guess what God showed me? Wow, I never knew I could feel like this. Guaranteed. And that's it.
Amazing. So handouts. Yeah. And we enjoyed that? Wonderful. And we're going to fast? Wonderful. Fasting is the kind of thing, when I do it, it's, man, I should do this more often because it's so it gets enjoyable. Once you push through the hard early stages, then you feel so close to the Lord, and the clarity and all the busyness of life seems to go away, and you think, man, I should be doing this more often. And then we fall back into the trap. Anyway, so my encouragement to us is to see it as a lifestyle. So more than just once a year we do it. Ask the Lord, how can I incorporate fasting into my lifestyle of worship to you? Because Jesus said, not if you fast, when you fast. Same as praying. So praying isn't just an event we do on a Thursday or Friday when we come to church or Sunday. It's a lifestyle of prayer. Yeah, so similar with fasting, I believe. Kind of that lifestyle of fasting. Yeah. Does that make sense? Awesome, Kerry. Well done. Well done. Let's thank Kerry again. Bless you guys. Thank you. Any other questions? Please feel free to see Kerry after the meeting. Bless you. Enjoy your afternoon without food.